Well, I hope everybody's ready. That was a long commercial break because that last match ended fast.
It did end pretty fast. All right, JD. I haven't seen Jim in a hot minute.
I feel like he was just around, though. When we were doing that podcast, I felt like he was in the room with me.
He's right there.
His microphone was good.
Even though he was in South Carolina. I think he's in South Carolina right now.
Yeah, he's building a house down there.
Yeah, working on the house as he starts things off with the Glacial Fortress. Maybe that's what Jim will call his house, a Glacial Fortress.
No, it's South Carolina. It's hot as heck.
Okay, well, then I'll think of something better.
Okay.
That's blue-white related. A Mystic Gate? Can we call it that?
No, because the gate's the part at the front of the house.
Okay, a Celestial Colonnade. I'm going to think of as many blue-white duels until you agree. This is the last one I can think of.
I don't know, man.
Can
we call it irrigated farmland?
How about an Adhikar Wastes?
Oh, that's just an insult.
I don't know what his house is.
That just sounds mean. Anyway, the best start possible here from Brendan DeCandio with Glint Sleeve Siphoner. This is the type of card you want to get early on against this blue-eye control deck. Seal Away, however, taking care of that.
Well, that is taken care of. Jim's got the answer to the Siphoner. Now, Brendan DeCandio came over to us, I believe it was after last round, and he said, quote, "I'll be surprised if I lose a match all day," unquote. He's very confident, is Peter Parker.
Yeah, that I can't in good conscience say that you should ever utter those words out loud, because usually karma just immediately bites you in the butt, just right away. However, he's currently 5-0 according to him, and is doing pretty good.
Yeah.
His deck looks great. He's playing great.
He's very, very, very happy with his deck choice. Thinks his deck is fantastic. DeCandio never one lacking in confidence, as here's a Castaway going after the Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
It's good to note here that a lot of the removal from Jen Davis's side of the battlefield does exile. And since Brennan's deck is very centered around the Scarab God to close things out, not having actual creatures in the graveyard is a little tough. And you'll see here Brennan actually choosing to Fatal Push his own Siphoner just to make sure he has a creature in the graveyard. Not only that, but he also doesn't have targets for Fatal Push in this matchup.
Yeah, so this is an interesting little play there by Brennan, because he's killing his own creature, which essentially feels like he's wasting his own card. But as Todd did mention, he doesn't have targets for Fatal Push in the matchup, and I believe you have his deck list in front of you, dude? No, actually, I do. I want to make sure that Brennan does have copies of Liliana to be able to get the Siphoner back, which he probably does.
Oh, absolutely. At least one main. For a while, people were going up to 2 main.
Yeah, he's got 2 in his main deck here this weekend. So he'll be able to use Liliana's Death Majesty to get back Glint Sleeve Siphoner to continue to build a bigger advantage if he does want to go that route. Both these players, little Field of Ruin action here. We head back over to Brennan now. If near Deadlands, we head back to Jim. Jim will draw.
I think we're going to see a lot of that in this matchup, just land go, land go. I think hitting your land drops in this matchup is pretty important. You want to get to, like Jim specifically wants to get to a point where he can cast something like Torrential Gearhulk or Glimmer of Genius while having Counterspell mana up, or Teferi even with Counterspell mana up. He has to expect Brennan has some number of things like Essence Scatter for his Torrential Gearhulk, maybe even Supreme Will to counter something like Teferi. So he wants to play around that kind of stuff as much as he possibly can.
I think this arc, this is like Jim's invitational card, if he can make a card. It taps for mana. It's very expensive to draw a card. It's perfect. He's 1 permanent away from turning it on right now because he's got 7 lands, 2 enchantments on the battlefield, and then he will have the City's Blessing.
Yeah, he's 1 permanent away. So if he hits a land drop, he also can just cast a Seal Away here to get the City's Blessing. Just in case he doesn't draw a land, he has something to do with his mana next turn. However, I'm not sure I really love that play. This is going to be a long game, a big resource battle for sure.
I think Jim has to think, too, I'm going to draw a land eventually. So what's the rush?
You say that.
Yeah, you do. DeCandio's drawing plenty of lands. He'll play a swamp and pass the turn back.
Yeah.
All right, Jim said enough is enough. I'm going to play a Seal Away, get myself the City's Blessing. So there it is.
Yeah, so now if Brennan passes turn again, if he didn't draw a land, he has the ability to draw a card. Heads-up play from Jim, I believe, earlier using the Field of Ruin to take care of Brennan's before he played his Arch of Vraska.
Yeah, which I liked a lot there by Jim. It may have looked a little bit strange. Now, again, this is a very expensive way to go about drawing a card. You got to pay 5 mana and tap that thing, so the shields are certainly down to draw that card. But Brennan doesn't have a great way to punish him, Todd, for doing that.
No, so Brennan, like, he basically needs to draw a string of cards. Like, no one card in this situation is going to dig him out of the spot. He's drawn a lot of lands and a lot of reactive spells. He has cards like excuse me. He has cards like Vraska's Contempt, which trade like 1 for 2 against Teferi. And that's just not good enough. You know, like, you need to be proactive.
Yeah, a big thing about this matchup, too, if you're Jim's side and you know you're playing against black-blue mid-range, these decks lack counter magic. So the ability to just play a Teferi like Jim did, and now Glimmer Genius, he knows these spells are going to resolve. I can attempt to sculpt the perfect hand and win at my leisure.
Yeah, I mean, even if, the blue-black mid-range decks do occasionally play things like Supreme Will. You can see an Essence Scatter in Brennan's hand, but that's not going to interact well with things like Teferi or Glimmer of Genius.
Jim going to get a little bit more energy here.
He has no way to use energy. Just get out. Just get it out. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, Jim's going to... They're going to share energy counters here. Looks like someone was a thief and stole our Jacob Ball counter last match. Hopefully that gets returned. We're going to hold their prize
we have,
ransom.
I was going to say, we have all the deck list sheets on the table still from last round, so we'll figure out the culprit one way or another.
That's right. You can't get away with our energy token. We don't have any more of those.
That's a bannable offense.
That's right.
Just kidding. But please don't do that.
I'll ban them. I wasn't kidding.
Okay. Champion of Wit's a great draw here from Brennan. It's going to let him cash in some of these dead, like, fatal pushes and such, hopefully finding something a little bit better. Now, Jim has the option here to counter it, but then he would need another disallow or something out of the graveyard in order to take care of it permanently.
Well, there's a disallow. Quick scoreboard update as a disallow resolves. Ross Merriam, his humans, beating up on Todd Stevens' humans. The members of Team BCW on your left currently up ahead. And you got to remember, Todd Stevens is also a member of Team BCW, and so is Jim Davis. Jody Keith, your outlier in this matchup.
So this is all 5 of them?
They're all right here.
Wow. BCW represent. I was actually asked to join Team BCW at the beginning of the year. I wish I had.
Misplayed.
Misplay.
Punted. You'd be in this match. You'd be Jody Keith right now.
This actually might be a blowout here. So Jim used the disallow and hopes to be able to use Torrential Gearhulk, but an Essence Scatter from Brennan. He gets full value out of it, and also gets to bring back the Champion of Wits, draw 4, discard 2.
Yeah, that's a bit of a beating. That is one of the counter spells that Brennan does play, is Essence Scatter. A great card in the format right now. Not great against blue-white control, but it does counter their lone creature.
Yeah. Jim actually had access to Syncopate, but he can only Syncopate for 1, and Brennan conveniently had 1 mana untapped.
So Champion of Wits is back.
Back again.
It was eternalized. Drew a bunch of cards, discarded a couple, and now it also provides a clock that you have to imagine Davis has some sort of an answer to it. His deck is one that is full of removal.
Yeah, he has multiple Sealways in hand. The Syncopates are slowly getting worse and worse. You're probably going to see Jim have to Syncopate for like 7 or 8 here in a moment to counter some smaller spell, effectively tapping him out and making it so that Brennan can resolve something else on the same turn. Or either that, or you're going to see Syncopate just never be cast because it's never able to counter something.
Well, here's Glincy's Siphoner again. Glincy's Siphoner, again, a very interesting card in this matchup because obviously, Todd, it's great on the second turn of the game, but it's not even bad on turn 10 like it's shown up here.
If a game goes to turn 10, those are going to be the matchups where Siphoner shines. You know, you really want to draw Siphoner against decks that either don't have removal, so you get to play the control role and just use those cards to your advantage to kill a bunch of your opponent's creatures, or you want to have it as an aggressive way to interact with a control deck. Force their hand in some instances, make them burn removal early on so that they don't have access to removal against something like the Scarab God.
Doomfall was the spell played there by Brennan DeCandio. He made Jim exile a Syncopate, a card that's getting worse and worse as we go. Jim is now going to activate his Arc, draw a card, and now play Seal Away.
Yep, and now that the shields are down for a second, there was a chance for Brennan to actually just resolve a Torrential Gearhulk, which, I think he wants to try to use it on something like Essence Scatter for a follow-up Gearhulk from Jim. But maybe getting a 5/6 body onto the battlefield was more important.
Jody Keith is back doing his thing. He wins game number 1 there over Tannen Grace. Lands up a game over Grixis Delver. We know Jody got away from lands briefly, but he's back on his pet deck, a deck that he's had so much success with and currently up a game.
Yeah, this is an aggressive tuck by Jim, choosing instead to deny resources from Brennan as opposed to drawing a card, figuring that eventually his card advantage will win out.
Never to Return is going to take care of Teferi, or at least attempt to do so. Again, Jim is gripping that Syncopate that we know about, Todd, and boy, does it look pretty poor here.
Now, to be fair, the Doomfall did steal one of the 2 Syncopates, so it's done its job for the most part.
Oh boy, it's getting tougher here for Davis. There's a Bloodfast.
Yeah, I mean, he can only Syncopate for 5 right now. He's going to use this Glimmer of Genius in response to look for hopefully a copy of Negate main deck, which he does have exactly 1, so he needs to hit a 1-outer.
Search for his Kanta is a card that Jim has found. I'm not surprised to see him leave that on top, so hit 1 and 2. Does he find Negate? He does not, so it looks like Bloodfast is going to resolve. DeCandio is going to start using his life as a resource here. Pay 2, draw a card.
Out.
Pay 2, draw a card.
And he's going to play that Siphoner. Tucking away things doesn't work when you get to draw like 3 extra cards a turn off of Arguel's Bloodfast.
Now, I'll tell you what. I've watched Brendan DeCandio play a lot of Magic. I watched him win back-to-back Opens as well. And when DeCandio is playing with this kind of body language and this type of precision, it doesn't surprise me that he thinks he's going to have a very good weekend. Now, going undefeated with this deck, being surprised if he loses, well, that's a tall order. But you can tell right now he knows exactly what he's looking to do here in this matchup, Todd.
Yeah, I think that the Black-Blue mid-range deck is reasonably favored after sideboard, although there is a significant chance that these players end up drawing the match. The games take so long, and if they trade games back and forth in games 1 and 2, it's going to be hard for someone to win game 3. They both have access to a ton of ways to interact on different spectrums, effectively grinding each other down to virtually no resources. They both have ways to check any sort of threat that can come their way. And even if one deck does have a huge advantage, it still takes them a little while to actually close the game. Like earlier, I thought Jim was in a commanding position, and now I think that Brennan just has him on the ropes. But things can change in a heartbeat. Here comes there's going to be a Torrential Gearhulk in a second, flashing back a Glimmer of Genius more than likely, and that's just going to swing things back in Jim's favor.
Yeah, well, that Bloodfast is a huge issue for Jim, though.
Definitely agree with that.
That card is a real pain in the neck for any blue-white control deck to beat in Standard. For a little while there, as Glincy Siphoner is going to come in here and give DeCandio an energy. Some felt that Arguel's Bloodfast may be the best card in Standard, given how the metagame shaped up. Now, Seal Away is going to attempt to take care of this Glincy Siphoner, and that's going to work.
Yeah, but it's already done its job. It drew a card. It forced Jim's hand. He can no longer cast the Torrential Gearhulk that's in his hand right now. Instead, he's sitting on Syncopate and an Essence Scatter.
Champion of Wits.
Yeah, don't want to Essence Scatter that one since he has 7 mana to bring it back immediately.
Merriam and Stevens, they're all tied up. That Human's Mirror is going by pretty quick. Of course, if we have time to jump that way, we will, but I'd be shocked if we do, because this one should take up the majority of our time, and it might be the one that decides the match, of course. Jody Keith is in a very favorable matchup. Merriam will be on the play for game number 3, a great place to be in the Human's Mirror, and we'll see how things shake out here as we're deep in game number 1. We're going to head back over to Jim as he untaps, search for his Kanta trigger. He looks at his graveyard, realizes, hey, I got 7 cards down there. I can transform this into Kanta, the Sunken Ruin.
Yeah, and now it's going to be Arguel's Bloodfast versus Ascanta, the Sunken Ruin. And again, while Jim doesn't have as many total resources right now that Jim does, Ascanta can bury you. And at a point, you can basically no longer draw cards with Arguel's Bloodfast, but you can always use your Ascanta again.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Ascanta. You can always activate that thing and find what you're looking for. Jim is going to take a Castaway this time.
Yeah, he could use that here to go ahead and knock off the Arguel's Bloodfast, and then hope that his Ascanta can help him deal with these creatures that Brennan has on the battlefield.
Yeah, you got to remember, too, that Jim is playing a blue-white control deck. So even though we haven't seen cards like Settle the Wreckage or Fumigate really be cashed at this game, you know that those are options here as Bloodfast is going to go active. Creatures, generally the least of Jim Davis's concerns.
So I'm pretty sure Argio's Bloodfast drew 5 cards. Is that good?
That's not. But Brennan's at 11.
Oh, man.
Did you forgot about that part.
Man, that stinks.
Bloodfast looking extra good in this matchup. You have to imagine Jim has some answers in his sideboard, and when we get to the sideboards, we'll discuss that. But this is a game number 1. This is a main deck game. You see DeCandio does have a copy of Hostage Taker in hand right now. Not a great card in the matchup, that's for sure.
No, but if Jim gets a little wily with his Torrential Gearhulk, there's a chance. I mean, Brendan has enough mana where he could go Hostage Taker plus cast Torrential Gearhulk. So even though it doesn't look great, it's not that bad.
Essence Scatter going to take care of the Scarab
This
God.
is bad news.
Oh, boy. Liliana negates.
Oh! He found the negate last turn.
That's a big-time find there.
That's so big.
Liliana could have run away with that game, bringing back the Scarab God or other things. Jim, I think he's going to be cycling that at farmland, perhaps? That's just off to the side. Never mind.
Yeah, that's just his last untapped land.
Okay.
I think the last card in his hand, I believe, is Syncopate.
All right.
Oh, he still has the Torrential Gearhulk, and he drew a Disallow. So he's got 3 Shields of Protection and a Nazcanta going, but he has to beat the 4 power that's currently in play from Jim's side. He can't really afford to have the Champion of Wits go to the graveyard anyway, so it needs to be another Exile effect, and he's already used a ton of those. You take a look at his side of the battlefield, you see Cast Out, Seal Away, Cast Out, Seal Away. That's 5 of potentially 8.
Well, he's looking at Settle the Wreckage now, but he's also looking at Teferi. And this is where things do get a little bit tough if you're Jim, because Teferi is your most powerful card, no question. As great as Akanta is when it transforms, this is a Teferi deck. This is a Teferi format. Does he want to take that, or does he want to take Settle the Wreckage? Well, he's decided he wants to take the powerful Planeswalker. Curious to see if he'll deploy it this turn or not.
I mean, I think that it's an easy play to cast the Teferi this turn. You can untap and have a reasonable Syncopate plus Disallow up or a Torrential Gearhulk up. And both those, I think, are fine. The problem is that if Jim suspects that Brennan has a Vraska's Contempt, Torrential Gearhulk or Vraska's Contempt, he needs to try to make sure he can counter one or both of those to protect his Teferi.
Well, you have to imagine, right, he's got at least one Vraska's Attempt or Torrential Gearhulk, because he has had really no reason to cast those cards yet outside of the Teferi that was cast earlier in the game. And this is a deck that does play 4 copies of Vraska's Contempt, is black-blue mid-range.
Yeah, and sometimes there's Commit to Memory as well, just as a 5th kind of Vraska's Contempt that won't gain you life, but does have some added value with Torrential Gearhulk, since you can flash back the memory part of it in some matchups where you get down on resources.
This will be a Hostage Taker here from Ben and DeCandio. Again, I think the thought process here is pretty simple, as he's actually going to eat his own creature, eat his own Champion of Wits. Interesting.
Yeah, that allows him basically to have a bit of insurance if Jim does go for something like Fumigate. But on top of that, he also can just recast it next turn with the Hostage Taker's ability, allowing him to loot away 2 cards that are less desirable.
It's a fun little play there from DeCandio. As you can tell, he certainly knows the interactions of his black-blue mid-range deck. Yeah,
and exactly what happened, or what happens is exactly what Brennan was expecting in a Fumigate. And I don't think he's going to try to fight over it.
He'll cycle.
Interesting.
Cycle Fetid Pools. Creatures will bite the dust. Champion of Wits is back on the battlefield. Draw 2, discard 2. Like that play there from DeCandio. Leaves him with a little bit of ammo on the battlefield and going to make his hand a little bit better.
Honestly, the more I think about it, I think he might have targeted the Glensleaf Siphoner.
Oh, okay.
Just because you want the Champion of Wits to go to the graveyard. Like, obviously, the draw 2, discard 2 effect is desirable. It lets you get rid of some extra lands or dead removal spells. But you get to basically protect the Siphoner. Like, Jim needs to do something, right? Like, he has to have some way to clear up 4 creatures, or 3 creatures. And he's pretty low on life total. But, I don't know. It's close. It's close for sure.
Kanta. Take a look at the top couple. Fumigate and Disallow. An easy selection there from Jim. He makes it really quick. Working ourselves to about 30 minutes left in the match. We're still in game number 1. Now, of course, sideboard games generally go faster. Players have more interaction, might be bringing in more creatures, and solidifying their decks more.
Just want to point out that both players have had Torrential Gearhulk in hand for approximately 6 turns now, maybe longer.
Not playing it.
And have not cast. Neither of them have cast.
Teferi's here. Drawing a card up to 5 loyalty. We know that this card can have a huge effect on the game all by itself. Arguably the best card in Standard. There's a Vraska's Contempt. DeCandio using one of the most powerful removal spells in Standard to take care of Teferi, or at least attempt to, as Davis is going to sift through his hand and eye up his graveyard, see if there's a clean way to maybe beat that.
So I don't believe. So he has access to either 2 copies of Disallow or Disallow plus Torrential Gearhulk, and I don't think you want to go for a Torrential Gearhulk because that just opens up Jim to get hit with an Essence Scatter and lose the counter war pretty easily.
And Jim doesn't have a ton of mana available right now. He's got 7 available. Jim taking a look at the graveyard, seeing, okay, there's another Vraska's Contempt down there. That's your plan. That's how you're going to stop this. Okay, let's see. Disallow. Counters that. Okay. All right, Teferi is here still. Let's go back over to Brennan.
Yeah, even though Jim was getting ready to untap the island in the plains, Teferi's ability doesn't target. So once Brennan had a response to the untap effect from Teferi, Jim obviously chooses to untap the better lands, the ones that tap for blue and white.
Champion of Wits. DeCandio's going to discard 2. You see he's got a copy of Ether Hub in hand, among other things. You know, some of the bad cards he'll be able to get out after sideboarding. A card like Hostage Taker, yeah, he had an innovative play with Hostage Taker, but ultimately not for this matchup.
Yeah, it's not for this matchup. You know, the games go pretty long, but here I think he's going to just basically do the same thing. Target his own Hostage Taker, probably recast it, but he still knows about that Syncopate, so he doesn't want to get his champion exiled.
And you see Hostage Taker is going to come down here. Cast Out is going to target whichever creature Hostage Taker was attempting to take, so whichever copy of Champion of Wits it was attempting to exile. Jim says, I'll actually exile that for you, thank you very much, and now I will untap all my lands, and I'm going to get to work with old Teferi.
Yeah, now he knows Brennan's only got 1 card left in hand. I think Jim can pretty safely main phase this Torrential Gearhulk, and if the last card is Essence Scatter from Brennan, he can syncopate that Essence Scatter since most of Brennan's lands are tapped.
First things first for Jim. Let's activate his Kanta. Hello, Settle the Wreckage. I dare you to try to attack my Planeswalker now, Brennan DeCandio.
It's so wild to me how swingy this game has been. At any given time, one player has had, a significant advantage of number of cards in hand. And right now, it's hugely in Jim's favor. But Jim's been able to deal with most of the really annoying cards from Brennan.
Brennan going to attack with just 1 creature over to Teferi because of that Settle the Wreckage he knows about now. Wouldn't make much sense to attack with 2. The follow-up is a copy of the Scarab God. That is a card that can get DeCandio back in the game if it resolves. But I've got a feeling Davis might have an answer. Hello, Torrential Gearhulk, fighting back with an Essence Scatter. But we know that Jim has that Syncopate. Does he have enough mana to work with that Syncopate to counter something here?
He's got Disallow as well, so
that'll work too.
He can choose to fight this, I think, with Syncopate anyway. He has 7 mana untapped. Oh, I guess he only has 8 mana, so Syncopate would only be for 7. So he's going to just use the Disallow on the Essence Scatter, and then Torrential Gearhulk's going to flash back a counterspell for the Scarab God.
And now Jim is going to go back to doing what he does best, drawing some more cards. Take a look at the top couple of cards there with Escanta. Essence Scatter going to go to the grip. He'll be untapping and drawing in just a moment. And now, Todd, I got to ask you the question that's probably on a lot of our viewers' mind. When is it time for Brennan DeCandio to pack it in?
In a team event, it's a little bit tricky. There was a little bit of talk at the Pro Tour of, do I want to basically refuse my opponents the ability to confer with each other? Like, once this match is done, Jim gets, or whoever wins, gets to help their teammates.
Okay.
But it's game 1. It's not the final game of the match.
Yep.
So I think you pack it up pretty quickly in this spot. If I'm Brennan, if I draw a brick here, I move on. Jim has 5 cards in hand, 6 cards in hand, Search for Escanta active, Teferi active, and Arch of Vraska, and a giant blocker. He's going to win the game. It's just a matter of how much more of his deck do you want to see.
Yeah, to me, this is a situation here. You talked about how this matchup can be long, and I do think it gets a little bit shorter after sideboard, but it's still long. And if you're trying to get all 3 games in, and if I'm down a game, which is certainly likely here for Brennan, I concede, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Got a little bit of information with a Doomfall, perhaps, and says, I'll concede this game. So Jim Davis is going to win game number 1 here over Brennan DeCandio. Blue-white control up a game over black-blue mid-range. That means we turn our attentions to the sideboards here for both players. We will start with Brennan DeCandio and his 3 negates. That's a lot of those. 2 Essence Extractions, 2 Duress, 2 Vizier of Many Faces, and plenty of one-ups, Todd. And Sorcerer's Spyglass, Search for Escanta, Jace's Defeat, Argul's Bloodfast, Doomfall, and Fungal Infection.
As you may notice, the majority of Brennan's sideboard are cards that are good against control decks. His main deck is very well set up to help interact with red-black aggro. Things like Fatal Push, ton of Raskus and Tempt and such, all very good against that deck. However, after sideboard, you have a lot of dead cards against blue-white, so you need to try to get those out of your deck. That's why we see 3 negate and 2 duress. You know, you're not just picking one or the other. You're having a combination of both, not only to hit them from different angles, but also just more than 4 total copies of that type of effect. We also have a copy of Sorcerer's Spyglass, which is pretty good against Teferi, since Teferi is one of the ways for the blue-white control deck to deal with a permanent on the battlefield. And so essentially, if you Spyglass a Teferi, not only do they have trouble actually getting rid of the Spyglass, it shuts off the Teferi completely, and so they can't use it to do anything else. Jace's Defeat, obviously good. It counters almost every relevant card from Jim's side. Basically everything except the removal spells. And Search for Escanta, Argul's Bloodfast, just hard to deal with permanents that can generate a significant advantage. We saw Bloodfast do some work in game 1, just wasn't quite enough. But we did see Search for Escanta from Jim's side take over the game. And then last but not least, Doomfall. Mostly there is just a 3-mana discard spell. It's probably the worst of the sideboard cards, but it's still good enough to come in.
Other side of things here for Jim Davis. 3 copies of Negate. You saw the 1 main deck already. 2 Brawl, Chief of Compliance. 2 Mystic Archaeologist. Maybe perhaps this card's getting popular. 2 Forsake the Worldly. 2 Lear Dawnbringer. Adjacent to Defeat to Settle the Wreckage. Another copy of Torrential Gearhulk. And a Sorcerer's Spyglass of his own.
So this is tricky. This sideboarding in this matchup from the control side is always pretty tough because you have to have a combination of ways to interact with creatures as well as a way to interact with non-creature weirdo stuff like Search for Escanta, Argul's Bloodfast, Planeswalkers. So you don't want to like go too hard on Negate, for example, because Negate only counters about half of the spells from Brennan's side. But at the same time, you need to make sure that they don't hit you with something like a Liliana or Bloodfast or something like that. Forsake the Worldly, I think, is a shoe-in just because of how strong both Bloodfast and Search are in the matchup. I don't think you want Lear Dawnbringer. I think you can assume most of the removal is going to get taken out from Brennan's side, so Mystic Archaeologist could be good, just a way to grind some resources. Jace's Defeat seems pretty sweet, stopping Gearhulk, the Scarab God, and a number of other blue cards. And then another Torrential Gearhulk probably just to have some more resources. More win conditions.
Well, these 2 players are going to take a look at their own hands. Looks like DeCandio has already taken a mulligan, so this gives us a great time to talk about the StarCityGames.com weekly sale where you, yes you, up to 20% off all English foils is what you can do. I implore you to head to go.starcitygames.com/weekly sale.
Good sir.
So you can save on cards like Day of Judgment, Lotus Bloom, and a whole bunch of fun other English foils up to 20%. This sale does end Monday, 10:59 a.m. East Coast time, but we'll have a new one up for you at 11 a.m. Go.starcitygames.com/weekly sale.
Doth thou spill the tea, sis?
I don't know what you just said. I don't know what that is. Is that from Monty Python?
No.
No?
No.
Right. That's my default guess. Not a good one.
You just said implore, and it just made me want to go Old English with Twitter memes.
That's a meme?
Yeah, spill the tea, sis.
I feel stupid. Jim Davis, a player we're going to learn about here just a little bit. Former Players Champion, beat you in the finals, guy. Not trying to rub it in. Not trying to rub it in. I'm just saying what happened. It's my job.
You know what? I know I'm on camera, but you almost made me swear at you just now.
It's my job.
It's your job to point out my greatest defeat.
Players Champion in 2015 is Jim Davis. Obviously a big hockey fan. Plays bass and sings backup vocals. Working on a house in South Carolina, and he is a full-time Magic guy. Article, streams, coaching, and traveling to events like he is right here. Played in Grand Prix Orlando last weekend, didn't go great, but things are off to a great start here for him and the rest of Team BCW, as we're getting right now to watch game number 2 between him and Brennan DeCandio. That was your greatest defeat?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I can't name another finals where I lost that made me feel as bad.
You lost to me playing for top 8 of a PTQ once. How'd that feel?
That wasn't the finals.
That was pretty bad, though. I was horrible.
Yeah, you were better than me. I was also very bad back then.
Were we like 20 then?
I was, let's see, it was Lorwyn block.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't remember how old I was. It was around that. It was probably 21, 22. Yeah.
Louisville, Kentucky.
It was Louisville, Kentucky.
Back in the day. I got ninth place on breakers.
Yeah. I remember at one point I said you should probably concede to me because your breakers are bad.
Yeah. And
then you got mad and laughed at me because
that definitely sounds like something I did.
Because I suggested you concede when you had beaten me.
I would never do such a thing. Sorcerer Spyglass is going to aim to Fairy. Mystic Archaeologist has resolved.
There it is.
All right,
let's see how good it is. I'm very curious myself. It's a new card. We haven't seen too much of it.
Yeah, from Core Set 2019, that Archaeologist. 2 mana, 2/1, 3 blue, draw 2.
Yeah. I mean, in matchups where you get a ton of mana like this, it's very similar to something like Azure Mage, which actually saw a ton of play back in the day, and I believe it's a throwback to that. 2 mana, 2/1, spend a bunch of mana, draw a card.
Yeah, this time you get to draw 2 cards.
Yeah, and that's why it's a rare to have an uncommon.
That's true. Good card in its limited format, too. Not unbeatable, but good. Here's a Vraska's Contempt to take care of this, potentially.
And this is why you want to bring in Mystic Archaeologist. Brennan has to use one of his best cards in the matchup in Vraska's Contempt, the card that helps him take care of a Resolve to Fairy, the card that can get him out of a Torrential Gearhulk gumming up the ground jam. Vraska's Contempt here is huge.
Oh, boy. Jim's having a bit of an issue here now, though. Looks like he's missed some land drops. Here's a Glintzy Siphoner. We'll see if this resolves. Essence Scatter says absolutely not. Now, remember, Sorcerer Spyglass is naming to Fairy, so the Planeswalker is somewhat handled right now. However, Jim's life total starting to become under a little bit of duress here, Todd.
Yeah, for sure. However, Jim is missing land drops, but at the same time, he has a bunch of cheap interaction to deal with things like Siphoner, so it's not really all that bad.
Land 4 is going to yield Glimmer Genius number 1. However, DeCandio is going to counter that very quickly with a negate. Jim will untap. He'll draw a card looking for land number 5.
I love that they're playing so fast now. Both players savvy enough in tournament play to realize the clock is going to be an issue. If Jim loses this game, he knows that it's going to be really tough to win the third game unless he plays super fast in both. And the same with Brennan.
Totally agree. Champion. See if this one resolves. It will. DeCandio going to draw 2 and discard 2. Essence Scatter among the cards that he's looking at now. Scoreboard update while Brennan decides on what he wants to discard. Todd Stevens. Humans, huh?
He always just seems to win.
He rarely loses, especially in Modern.
I don't get it.
He's really good at playing Modern, and that's all he does. He's a specialist, as they say. He defeats Ross Merriam 2-1. Jody Keith, Tannen Grace, they're still duking it out.
We should have put that one on camera, just a real-life versus video.
That's my bad. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Mic him up. We don't have to do anything. We can just take an hour break.
Yeah, back.
How about
that would have been tight.
Yeah.
Back in the day, me and BBD, we used to do the versus series, just us two on the free side, and every now and then we would play on camera like an invitational, and we would just joke that we were gonna just put that as our versus videos for the week.
Yeah, save everybody some time.
Yeah. We'll just chime in with our own commentary. Just use that match.
I like it.
They were always good matches, though.
Maybe a search for Escanta. Jim, a little conflicted here.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in the greatest spot. The seal away is able to cut the clock down a little bit, but Brennan's got some pressure on him, and the shields are down right now.
Scarab God time, maybe? Ooh, Liliana.
Liliana Scarab God combo.
That is a combo.
Now there's 2 big threats for Jim to deal with. I think if Jim misses here, he might just pack him up to save time for Game 3.
Or his old pal Jody Keith might go, I won, it doesn't matter.
Don't sweat it, bro.
Goon Squad represent.
So Teferi here can come down and minus on the Scarab God. And you see there's a little token marker there for the Scarab God because it is a zombie thanks to Liliana's ability, and it would check itself.
Very important.
Yep.
Liliana might be the first order of business.
He mills over the Scarab God, which is not great because you don't mind drawing that, but at the same time you need to.
Well, if you have another Scarab God, you certainly don't mind. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. This is all great for Brennan's side. Bad for Jim, but we're gonna have a game 3 more than likely, and they're both playing fast enough where they may be able to resolve this match without getting a draw.
Seal Away goes to the graveyard there from Search for Escanta. Jim will draw a mystery card for the turns. 5 mana for him. A Lyra Dawnbringer in hand now. Can that actually stabilize things? Potentially. He'll have to play it and find out. Get back, Torrential Gearhall, kill that. The answer is no, it cannot stabilize things.
Can it do the no?
No, it cannot. So, DeCandio going to tie things up here against Jim Davis. It's 1-1. It's lots of fun between these two players, teammates, and very established stars here on the SCG Tour. Not sure much changes for each player, and it doesn't look like Brennan's going back to the drawing board. Jim may. Anything stand out to you here, Todd, before this third game?
No, I don't think much changes on the play and the draw. I'm actually very surprised to see Jim Davis bring in Lyra Dawnbringer. Like, it's one thing to play a cheap card like Mystic Archaeologist that if the game goes super long, it can generate a significant advantage. It's another to invest 5 mana into a big creature that if your opponent uses less mana to deal with it than you spent on it, that's not great. So, again, I'm pretty surprised to see that he brought in Lyra Dawnbringer, but maybe he feels like now, after game, with very little time on the clock, he needs to be able to actually win the game, physically win the game.
Well, we're going to find out. Jim did go back to the drawing board briefly, so we'll see if something changes, but a quick word from our friends over at Ultimate Guard. Get your Super Hive today over at go.starcitygames.com/Ultimate Guard. As Tannen Grace, he always wins. You want to talk about always winning? Tannen Grace.
You put a Grixis Delver deck in that man's hand, you can expect roughly 85% or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
Deathrite Shaman's banned. I don't care. Lance is a bad matchup. I still don't care. Took down Jody Keith. I already told you earlier, Tannen Grace beat a Resolved Emrakul. Don't matter. Brennan going down to 6. Looks like Jim's going to keep 7. This is the one that matters the most, folks. And you see the clock. 13:30 and change to go. They'll have to play quick.
Accidentally flipped that island over.
Well, just give him away a little.
Yeah, that's fine. He'll just lead with island.
I bet you he won't. You want to bet? You want to bet?
No.
You want to bet?
No.
You want to bet? Ah, I win! I win!
Why? What? Why?
Got to get the
understand.
hub. He's leading with the hub. There's the island. And now here is a Glency Siphoner. The battle of the 2-1s for 2.
And it looks like Jim has enough mana to eventually start activating the Mystic, but it doesn't look like he has a Seal Away or anything like that to effectively get rid of the Glency Siphoner.
So this is interesting, right? Because Jim has a Syncopate in hand right now, so perhaps he was just supposed to leave Syncopate up as opposed to playing the Archaeologist. I'm not entirely sure, as he's up to 2 energy now as DeCandio.
Yeah, maybe. If he doesn't have the removal spell, that doesn't seem that bad of a play, right? However, he's also trying to play really fast.
Yep.
So that could have went through his mind for like a split second. He said, he probably doesn't have Siphoner. I'm going to play mine.
Well, Jim did pick up a copy of Cast Out.
Main phase in that here just leaves you... It doesn't leave you super vulnerable because most of the big baddies from Brennan come at 5 mana, not 4. But things can certainly go wrong.
In with the Siphoner. Siphoner was able to use the energy. Little life, draw a card. Hub. Pass. Nope, it's going to be a Champion of Wits.
Yeah, Syncopate here seems like a no-brainer.
Love a Syncopate there. That's exile. That's gone for good. Davis will draw. Does he have land number 5? An attack for 2 makes things very easy, down to 13.
I believe he has plenty of mana. Now it's just a question of, do you want to main phase kill Siphoner before another card is drawn? Or do you want to just say, okay, you can draw as many cards with Siphoner as you want. I'm going to draw a bunch of cards with my Mystic.
It could be a draw-off. It's interesting.
The problem is that Jim has to invest a bunch of mana to draw cards, whereas Brennan gets to keep attacking and drawing cards effectively for free.
You see Merriam and Grace behind DeCandio. Remember what DeCandio came up and told us? He said, I'd be shocked if I lost a match this week, and it's a bold proclamation, to be sure, but he is confident, and you saw the way he's played these games so far. He's got pretty good reason to be.
His deck has been kind to him. He's playing pretty well.
Liliana in, Zombie on the way.
Wow, he hit 2 graveyard cards. That's nuts.
Never to return and Champion of Wits, both placed into the graveyard. That's just good deck building talk.
Now Jim is in a tough spot because both the Siphoner and the Liliana are problematic. He only has 1 cast out, and he's probably going to have to use it to take care of Liliana. And he didn't get to draw cards with his Mystic.
Yeah, that's kind of brutal. Jim had some big plans for that turn. Maybe he was hoping that it was going to be something like the Scarab God that he could Essence Scatter. Who knows? Either way, he had to use cast. He had to use cast out on the Planeswalker, and now he can't even attack with the Mystic.
Right.
Yikes.
You know, we might awkwardly see a block and a draw 2 on the Zombie, but he decides he wants to try to keep the Mystic around for a little bit longer. He's on the back foot.
Yeah, this is starting to get really tough here for Davis.
Yeah, if I'm Brennan, I think I just keep casting stuff. But holding up for the instant speed, Vraska's Contempt is also fine.
Vraska's Contempt will take care of the Archaeologist, but Jim's going to pay the 5 mana to draw 2 cards, and now he will untap. He's got 6 mana. He'll draw a card. I believe he's got land number 7, Seal Away in hand right now, so he's got to do some climbing back into this one. He might be able to, though.
Yeah, I mean, he found a bunch of answers, which is what he needed. He's still at 10 life, which is reasonably high.
Yep.
And his hand is stacked. He still has Glimmer of Genius. I mean, that's why Mystic is so good. Like, it traded 3 for 1, basically. The card itself and 2 more for the card from his opponent.
What do we got here? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. It's a big guy.
Yeah, and Jim doesn't have a counterspell right now, but he does have a cast out. He's probably going to see him use it here on the Scarab God. But if it gets hit with a negate, whew, yikes.
It's getting bad here for Jim Davis.
Main phase Glimmer, like 99% here. There's no good targets for Torrential Gearhulk, and he's out of ways to interact with Scarab God.
And we know how the Scarab God works, right? If he gets to untap with that thing, we're all done. 1, 2. Maybe Jim's just supposed to play Glimmer last turn as opposed to cast out. Really don't know. Maybe Glimmer's the bait spell, or Glimmer finds the negate so you can resolve the cast out on your turn.
I think so. I think you end a turn Glimmer. The problem is that he wants to be able to like draw into, like, you don't feel good about like leaving up a bunch of mana on the table when you're behind on the battlefield. Like, you want to try to, step 1 for 1 basically. It's really tough though.
DeCandio on the upkeep, but the Scarab got triggered on the stack. Says, let me get back this Champion of Wits. I'll draw 4. I'll discard 2. You'll take a little bit of damage.
Takes 2 down to 6. He technically has a lethal attack. I believe Jim was able to find a Seal Away though.
He was. There's your scry. Now draw for the turn. DeCandio is in a commanding position. Hub, what will he attack with?
Yeah, gonna play around Settle the Wreckage, just not attack with the Scarab God. But luckily for him, he's also playing around Seal Away.
Now here's Searcher Escanta. Things are going so well right now for DeCandio. He says, you know what, I'm happy to only attack with a zombie. I don't need to add anything to the battlefield. I'll put a Searcher Escanta on. That's enough pressure in and of itself. Well, how that will change the game and increase my draw step. DeCandio coming from 2 very, very powerful angles right now as Davis is going to untap and draw.
Yeah, it's important to note that Search for Escanta actually just fuels the graveyard too. So
yeah,
even if he's able to deal with all of these other creatures that aren't the Scarab God, there's a chance that, Brennan just flips off a Torrential Gearhulk and then has an instant speed Torrential Gearhulk with the Scarab God's ability.
So something I've been thinking about right now is Jim's going to play an island. We saw these players really pick up their pace of play. I take a look at the clock right now. They got 7 minutes. Maybe they picked it up a little bit too much. You know, Jim with the turn 2 Mystic Archaeologist, yeah, it's obviously a very, very good card. No doubt about it. Essence Scatter are going to take care of that. Jim's going to extend the hand. So the team of DeCandio, Grace, and Merriam are going to win this match. And DeCandio's proclamation that ain't nobody beat me today is still holding true, as he did a very nice job. Gets a big hug there from Tan and Grace, trying to get Tan in that first trophy. DeCandio looked pretty good there. But my question for